We have been interested in understanding prices and quantity traded, and we know all these are determined in a market, and market has two types of economic agents, the buyers and the sellers. The behavior of buyers is studied through demand side of the story. The behavior of sellers is studied through the supply side of the story. And now what we have done so far is looked at demand independently and supply independently, or in other words, the behavior of buyers separately and behavior of sellers separately. Now we bring all of them together, and what we are now looking at is a market. And we are back to the same questions. One, and this is what I'll try to explain in this video: how are prices determined? And in subsequent videos, I'll show why do prices change. Now, when we say how are prices determined, what we are interested in is a level. For example, if all of us go to Starbucks and buy coffee, it's available for $3. And we want to know why is it $3 or how is it determined. And once we know this, what we'll try to figure out is if Starbucks changes the price from $3 to $5 per cup, why does this happen? Or it may not be just Starbucks, it could be any other product, and we want to know why do prices change, say just as an example, from $3 to $5. In terms of this slide, what I have done is the following. I have brought the behavior of buyers as reflected in quantity demanded of coffee, and the behavior of sellers as reflected by quantity supplied of coffee, and we have brought all of them together. The numbers we are using are exactly the same that we have used in the past lectures, so these are just an exact copy of those numbers. Now, to understand how prices are determined, keep two things in mind. Number one, this demand schedule that we drew up, it's based on the assumption that consumers know how much will they demand at each given price. But if you ask me how much would I be willing to buy at each given price, I just don't know. If I feel like having coffee, I'll go ahead and buy it. And the point I'm making is these numbers that I have written down are just for understanding the behavior or the understanding the phenomena of market. And so these are made up numbers more for classroom instructions than anything else. As far as supply goes, the sellers may have a better idea. But this is what we are likely to see in general terms. When prices are higher, we tend to buy less, and sellers are willing to sell more, and so on. Now, another thing to remember is that prices are determined through an iterative process, or in terms of number of steps, because the sellers do not exactly know what the demand schedule of consumers looks like. So, and this is now I'm making up an example. Suppose there's a company called Starbucks, and it has millions of retail outlets around the world, and it desires to sell coffee, and it has just started out selling coffee. So initially when it gets into business, it starts or sets a price of $1. At this price, the demand is 10 million cups, and the amount supplied by Starbucks to different retail outlets is 2 million cups, or the difference between demand and supply is 8 million cups, or demand is greater than supply. Now, when retail outlets get back to the headquarters of Starbucks in Seattle, they tell them that whatever coffee we had, we could not satisfy all the consumers, or the amount of coffee we had in an outlet was insufficient to fulfill all orders of coffee. By how much, that may not be important, but then the demand was greater than supply, and that's what we find here. Now, when demand is greater than supply, we call this a situation of shortage. So at a price of $1, this is what different retail outlets tell the headquarters of Starbucks, that there was a shortage of coffee. Now, Starbucks believes its coffee is really good and consumers could perhaps pay a higher price. And so they set a price of $2 per cup. At $2 per cup, quantity demanded is 8 million cups, quantity supplied is 4 million cups, and we still have a shortage, though the extent of shortage has decreased. Now suppose in the next time period Starbucks becomes really ambitious and sets a price of $5. At $5, Starbucks supplies 10 million cups of coffee to different retail outlets, but at this price the demand is only 2, and so what we have is the difference between demand and supply is negative, indicating that supply is greater than demand. And when you cannot sell all that you have, what we have is a situation of inventory buildup. In the next time period, Starbucks tries another price, say $4 per cup. Again they have an inventory buildup, but it's not as much as they had earlier. And then in the next time period, suppose by chance Starbucks decides to charge a price of $3, and what it finds? 6 million cups of coffee are demanded, 6 million cups of coffee are supplied, and we have no shortage or no inventory buildup. This point where we have no shortage or no inventory buildup is simply called equilibrium. And what is equilibrium? Equilibrium is the price at which market demand equals market supply. So this is how equilibrium price is determined, and we believe it is in the interest of sellers to continue to maintain this price. So the table in a way explains how prices are determined. Now some terms that I may use interchangeably. Another term for shortage is excess demand. I'll write excess demand. Why? Because demand exceeds supply. Another term for inventory buildup is surplus in production. Another term for this inventory buildup is excess supply. I'll just write S. So we should know what is equilibrium and what is a shortage and what is an inventory buildup. Shortage takes place when the price is low or lower than equilibrium. Inventory buildup takes place when prices are higher than equilibrium. Based off the numbers from the previous slide, we can draw a demand curve represented by this blue line and a supply curve represented by this red line. And we know what is equilibrium. It is the price at which quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. Look at this point of intersection between demand and supply curve. Here quantity demanded is 6 million cups, quantity supplied is also 6 million cups. And what is the price at which this is happening? It is $3 per cup. Or what we have here is a price at equilibrium. So let's just write PE, and this is at $3. In the previous table, we had also examined the case, suppose Starbucks initially sets a price of $1 per cup, and we know, based on our determination of equilibrium price, that a price of $1 per cup, which we can call PL, or lower price, is lower than the equilibrium price. And at this price, how much is quantity supplied by Starbucks? It is 2 million cups. How much is quantity demanded by consumers of Starbucks coffee? 10 million cups. Or what we have is a situation which is where demand is greater than supply, or we could call this a situation of excess demand or a situation of shortage. Now consider a price which is higher than equilibrium price, such as a price of $5 per cup. At this price, how much is quantity demanded? It will be, you just go to the demand curve, bring this to the horizontal axis, and that will be 2 million cups of coffee. At a price of $5 per cup, how much is quantity supplied? It will be 10 million cups of coffee. Or in other words, quantity supplied is 10 and quantity demanded is 2 million cups. Or in other words, this difference between supply and demand is a situation of excess supply. Why? Because supply is greater than demand. And this situation is also called a situation of surplus production, or this is also called a situation of inventory buildup. So based on this diagram or what we have discussed in the previous table, just remember, if a price is lower than equilibrium price, we will have a situation of excess demand or a shortage. And if the price is higher than equilibrium price, we'll have a situation of excess supply or surplus or inventory buildup. Different terms which mean one and the same thing. And when we have a price at which quantity demanded equals quantity supplied, that's where we have equilibrium. Now here are some definitions that you should know. What is equilibrium? Equilibrium is the price at which quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. What is a market shortage? It's a situation in which demand is greater than supply, and this happens when the market price is lower than the equilibrium price. Another term you should know is what is surplus, a situation in which supply exceeds demand, and this usually happens when price is higher than equilibrium price. So in this video, what we have learned is how our price is determined in terms of level, and the same thing applies to quantity traded. In the next video, I'll try to explain why do prices change, what is an explanation for that. Thank you.